Call to order the meeting for December 14th, 2017. I'd first ask for a motion to come out of the executive session.
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And would everybody stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the treasurer call the roll, please?
Mr. Gregerson.
Here.
Mr. Height.
Here.
Mr. Luby.
Here.
Mr. Bostic.
Here.
Mr. Patrizio.
Here. Well, tonight we have two board members that it will be their last meeting with us, and one is Mr. Luby and one's Mr. Gregerson. Both of them have spent countless years in our district. We are going to miss both of them, and thank each of you for your service to the schools as teachers, principals, and board members. And we wish you both the best of luck in the future. And Mr. Luby, I'm going to pass the gavel to you and ask that you conduct the meeting tonight as your final send-off.
Thank you, Frank.
You're welcome.
First thing we have to do is approve the minutes from the November 12th board work session and the November 16th regular Board of Education meeting. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Hiddle?
Mr. Bostic.
Aye.
Mr. Patrizio.
Aye.
Mr. Gregerson.
Aye.
Mr. Height.
Aye.
Mr. Luby.
Aye. We have to now approve the agenda, so we need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Hiddle?
Mr. Height.
Aye.
Mr. Luby.
Aye.
Mr. Gregerson.
Aye.
Mr. Bostic.
Aye.
Mr. Patrizio.
Aye.
We'll move on to the board reports, and we'll start with the Upper Valley Career Center, and Mr. Height and I both have reports, so Mr. Height, why don't you do the first
I'd
one?
be happy to start. This is from the November 27th meeting, and I'm going to probably sound more like a travel agent than anything else because at that meeting we were briefed on the student trip to Germany. And the thing that the students brought back as much as anything was they did not just tour manufacturing facilities, but were very immersed in the German culture. They stayed in students' homes. They visited a variety of historical sites while they were in Germany, including a concentration camp and a section of the Berlin Wall. And one of the things that the students commented on was they were looking at things that were built in the 15 and 1600s instead of things in the United States that's 200 years old. They realized that we're really not that old. And we're also sharing a lot of information now about our apprenticeship program. And because of our trip and a trip with German students here, we're gaining a lot of attention, not just in Ohio and not just nationally, but internationally as well at the Career Center because of our apprenticeship program. And also along those lines, our Career Center staff and students recently presented about our apprenticeship program to a conference of schools from 23 states. So we're getting a lot of attention from that program. And also we were the recipient of an additional 5 acres of land donated by the Garbry Center that's adjacent to the Willowbrook facility. So a lot of good things are happening.
Thank you, Mr. Height. I'll report on the December 12th meeting. The Upper Valley Career Center Board of Education met on Tuesday, December 12th, and the evening began with a delicious dinner, and Mr. Height can support that, served by the culinary arts students, and it was fantastic, wasn't it, Andy?
Yes, it was.
Very well done. We enjoyed
But
that.
there's no pressure.
Yeah, where's our culinary arts department? I don't know. We'll have to develop one here. You guys will. The first item on the agenda was a discussion of developing a classroom for electrical trades in the school's lab. Their ultimate goal is to have a state-of-the-art demonstration area in the classroom to provide training in new areas of technology. So that's something that's on the agenda. Other items included a first reading on various policies and regulations. Also, there was a passage of a resolution approving a community reinvestment area agreement between the Village of Jackson Center and the Lipper Manufacturing Company. They wanted a 15-year abatement on property taxes to start their business there. The board also accepted donations from various businesses, and also we heard financial reports and approved meeting dates for 2018. That's all. Okay, moving along. Let me find my spot here. Yeah, we're down to the legislative reports. Mr. Patrizio.
There's been numerous bills that have been introduced in both the House and the Senate, significant bills. There's Senate Bill 200, which deals with voucher systems, which has had several readings before the state legislature. There is so much of the other stuff that you don't know if it's even going to get out of committees or whatever, but that seems to be the most significant item, and it could affect our district in the long run. I think it's going to affect areas where there's much more in charter schools and other types of schools than ours at this point in time. Nothing has passed at this point in time.
Thank you, Frank. Moving on to the hearing of the public, I've not had any requests to address the board. So now we'll move to the treasurer's agenda. Mr. Hiddle.
Good evening. Are there any questions on the monthly financial reports? Next thing that's on the list is to recommend that the board approve the treasurer and superintendent to enter into various agreements with Miami County ESC during the school year. This is something that we normally would vote on in July, and we realized it was missed, so we wanted to put that back on here for your approval. And then the third thing on there is the approval of the student organization Calc Chief Athletic Leadership Council. It's something that Mr. Hare is leading up, and it deals a lot with the fundraising that we've done with the Blue Out and the Green Out and those kind of things, and be able to establish a student organization that can direct where those funds go. Specifically, when we're trying to do that for individuals in need, we have to have a little bit more documentation and paperwork to be able to prove what we were doing and the intent and purpose. So that's the reason why that's on here tonight. And number 4 is the recommend the board approval of the tax budget for fiscal year 19. It's something that we do normally in January, but the auditor asked us to push it up to December. So,
Any questions for Mr. Hiddle? If not, need a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Hiddle, please call the roll.
Mr. Bostic,
Aye.
Mr. Gregerson,
Aye.
Mr. Patrizio,
Aye.
Mr. Luby,
Aye.
Mr. Height.
Aye.
Okay, moving on, we will now hear the superintendent's report.
Our first item on there is random drug testing. For a good several months now, the administrators and some board members have been talking about the possibility of random drug testing with our students, athlete students, as well as pre-employment drug testing. And we've done some research on that, have asked around, we've talked to some other districts, had the opportunity to talk to some providers at the Ohio School Boards Association event that we went to in November, and recently 2 board members and administrators went to Miami East to see their program and talk to administrators and to learn more about the effects of it. So we are to a point now where we brought in, we've narrowed down to who we would like to work with if we move forward with that. It's Great Lakes Biomedical, and Kyle Pruder is here tonight with a guest, and he has offered to come and talk and answer some questions and just kind of share out how they do things within their organization. So I'd like to welcome them to the stand and do a presentation. And my goal would be at the end of this to see if this board would like to move forward with any plans with this. If so, I would like to put a timeline together and start working through a process that could put us in place for random drug.
My name's Kyle Pruder. I'm the president of Great Lakes Biomedical, and this is Zach Boris. He's our sales manager there. We're a drug and alcohol testing company. We specialize in student drug testing, though we do airline pilots, truck drivers, bus drivers, and things of that nature. Currently, we are servicing about 140 to 150 schools throughout the state of Ohio for their student drug testing program. So we've been doing this for about 20 years, so we do have a significant amount of experience with it. First question I always like to have answered for this type of program is, what's the purpose? And we just want to assure everyone that the purpose is prevention. It's not a gotcha program. It's not trying to get kids, catch them. It's giving them one more reason to say no to drugs. And the time that this program is most effective is, say, Saturday night when some kids are out and maybe in the midst of making some bad decisions, hey, you want to smoke a joint? And gives a kid an opportunity to say, you know what, we have a testing program. I could get picked. Let's do something else. Right there. That's the whole gist of the program. So another thing I like to kind of get out of the way right in the beginning of the talks with all this is some of the myths that are out there about student drug testing. The first one I usually hear is, well, if you do this, there goes the football team. Why are you pushing all these kids away from doing extracurriculars and things of that nature? And I'm here to tell you that that doesn't happen. But don't believe me, we have handed out a bunch of packets that have a good share of the schools that we currently service. Feel free to call any of them, and I don't think there's a single one that has ever had a decrease in any type of activity. There's been a few that actually have increases. I can't say that's because of what we do, but no decreases whatsoever. And the other thing is typically, well, this is going to cost a ton of money. How can the school afford $50,000, $60,000 to do a program? It doesn't cost that much at all. Our standard test is about $15 per test. So how does the program work? We can do two different types of programs. I think if you're looking at the same way that Miami is doing it, they do random testing only. The other type of program is called, we call it draw the line testing. You will essentially on a certain date at the beginning of the year, you will say August 15th is drug testing day. Come on in at 2 o'clock and we're going to do the drug test. Now, a lot of people might think, you just told the kids, what the date is. This isn't any type of surprise. They're just going to clean themselves up for the test. And my answer to that is, yeah, isn't that great? You do have something that makes them clean themselves up, and then you do randoms afterwards of at least 20% of your pool. The significance of doing that type of test is actually the self-referrals. Because remember, this isn't a punitive type program. This is made to help kids. And I can't give you the numbers of how many kids it happens to because the schools don't report it. But every school has told me they've had kids come up and do a self-referral is what it's called. The day of the test, the day before the test, a kid will come up and say, coach or whoever they're talking to, I don't need to take this test. I'm not going to pass. Well, if you think about that, this kid's what, 15, 16 years old? You told them the date of the test, and they can't clean themselves up. You now have identified a kid that has a problem, and you're able to help them. It's only a one-time, get out of jail free card. You can't do that every time the test comes up, but that's just, one way to do it. The other way, of course, is do simply random testing. With random testing, I would suggest to have at least 50% of your pool tested. Some schools do 100%, and anything in between. It kind of comes down to effectiveness versus budget, which will help you with both sides of that. So, how does the program work? What does the day look like, with testing? Well, the first thing is we take care of pretty much we take care of picking the randoms, so the school doesn't have anything to do with that. We don't know your kids. They are literally numbers to us, which is good. And we put them into our random number generator, which is the same machine that we use, computer program that we use for truck drivers, airline pilots, and things like that. And it does the picking for us. So I just want to make sure in case anyone is thinking, well, the captain of the football team or the guy that's not, not so good there, doesn't matter. It's just totally random, same thing as a lottery. So I'm going to have Zach here go through the details of what a day looks like for testing, so you kind of get an idea of of what happens to like a student during the testing process.
Good evening. So our company works with 1 or 2 representatives within the district, usually athletic director, principal, administrators who work with the students on a daily basis. So for example, we were to schedule Monday morning at 9 a.m. for a random test of 30 students. Prior to that test, we would receive a list of eligible students from usually the athletic director via email or fax, however he wants to send it. Send it over to us. We would import that roster into our system. We would say select a number of 30 with a list of 30 alternate students. We hit the lottery, spin the wheel, 30 students, 30 alternates, spits out 30 names and 30 additional students in the place of those first 30. We send that roster via email to the athletic director prior to that testing date. He receives that list. A technician from our company would show up Monday morning at 9 a.m. We would set up usually within a designated area, nurse's office, private restroom that's secluded from really the school. Students come down, they report to us, they say, "Hi, I'm Johnny Smith." Johnny Smith is number 1 on our roster. He comes in, "Hi, I'm Johnny Smith." We give him cup label number 1 for Johnny Smith. He goes into the restroom. He provides his sample, comes out to our technician, signs out, Johnny Smith, number 1, and he goes back to class. In Johnny's life, he got called down to the office, peed in a cup, and went back to class. Now, we perform those collection procedures for all of the students. The average is about 2 to 3 minutes per student in a single stall restroom. They all come down, they provide, they go back to class. Their eyes, they're done. That's all they did. Now, when everyone's finished with their collection procedure, we go through and we screen the samples. Similar to a pregnancy test, a yes or no test, we screen those samples in the hopes that all of the tests are negative. Then we report back to the district representative, "Hey, here's 30 students, they're all negative, we'll see you next time." Now, if there's a non-negative, say a student was not negative, it's not a positive test yet, it's just not negative. What we do then is we take that sample, we seal that sample up, and we fill out a chain of custody form. Same chain of custodies that the Department of Transportation, airline pilots use for the drug test. We send that sample away to the laboratory for a confirmation test. That test goes to the lab, it gets confirmed for what we think may be non-negative. They submit that report back to our medical review officer, who's our physician certified in drug and alcohol testing. The MRO then reaches out to the parents of Johnny Smith. He says, "Hi, I'm Dr. Short with Great Lakes. We tested Johnny at Piqua on Monday. Are there any medications that he or she may be on?" "Yes, he takes Adderall for ADHD once a day." "Okay, great. Can you send that prescription over to me?" He verifies that that's a prescription. Then we release a negative report back to the district. That's a good thing. The other scenario would be it's a non-negative for marijuana or THC. Same process goes through. Johnny's sample gets collected, it screens as a non-negative, send it to the lab for confirmation. The lab submits it back to the MRO. The MRO reaches out to the parents. Says, "Hi, Dr. Short with Great Lakes. Are there any medications Johnny's on?" And she says no. And the MRO explains the procedure, that there's marijuana in his system, and we have to release a positive back to the district. We then, in return, release a positive drug test back to Piqua, and then you guys go through your process as a district. During this time, there's checks and balances with the whole chain of custody, Johnny signing into the test, Johnny signing out of the test, and then the verification process from the MRO standpoint in the lab. The district has nothing to do with selection of the students, testing of the students, or reporting of those results to the students. We handle all of that for you. The only thing we need from the district is usually the athletic director or principal present or nearby during the collection procedure, just to verify students that they're who they say they are. From then, we go back and we would schedule another testing date with the district, and in return, do the same process. So it's can't really butter up drug testing too much. It's sort of cut and dry. We go by the gold standard in drug testing, so we do a lot of urine tests. You can do saliva tests, you can do hair tests. So it's up to you as a district what you would like to test for, and costs is associated with the different forms of testing.
What's the typical response from the parents when you tell them their child is tested positive?
Majority of the parents aren't so shocked, as usually they know what's going on in the students' lives. They may be opposed to the result, and there are checks and balances that they have. They have other alternatives of, say, having that same sample that her son or daughter or his son or daughter produced to be sent to another laboratory for another confirmation. But a majority of the time, parents are pretty aware of what their son or daughter may be doing. Any questions about the collection, testing? Okay.
However, the schools that have done it, what's their satisfaction rate with doing it? Do you have some that drop off, or most of the schools have continued on with
We, actually, we've never had a school leave because they were dissatisfied. It was more of a budgetary concern. We've actually had schools that have been in fiscal watch through the state of Ohio that have continued a student drug testing program because that's how much they believed in the program. This program's never going to eradicate drug use within your district, but you will see a cultural change within the school district because of the program.
And we've had a few schools that, I guess we'll say, took a break because basically they couldn't get any levies passed, except, well, you guys know how all that works. And we've offered, on one of the schools, for example, even said, you know what, we'll come in like twice a year and do 10 or 20 kids for you for free, just to keep it going. We did that for like a year or so, and then they came back and once they got themselves straightened out, they did come back to the program. But we haven't had any yet that said, this is just horrible, we don't like it, it's not having a good impact. Because again, so often when you're doing this program, it sounds like that this is administration driven, top down, we're gonna lay the hammer on the kids and such, and it's really the opposite. Most schools have a zero tolerance policy. That used to be the thing. I got 5 kids, and you're darn right, zero tolerance, you know. But it would be kind of like, gotcha, you're out. This is totally different. While it sounds like it's harsher, what happens is, once you have your policy in place, let's say that someone does make an error and they do test positive. Instead of saying, well, you're out of here, they're given 2 choices. As I always told my kids, you got 2 paths you can go down, path A and B. Please choose A. You're going to be assessed by a substance abuse professional. Were you just making some bad choices, or are you seriously in some trouble here? We need to find that out to get you the help. The next few random tests, not so random for you, because we already know that there's a problem, so we're going to help you stay straight because you are going to be tested. And there has to be some bite into the activity, so there's usually like 20% of your activity for the first offense, 2 football games, something like that. But you know what? You're still going to practice. You're still part of the family. You're still part of the team. We want you to stay, and we're going to get you through this. You don't want to do that? We can't make you. So therefore, that's option B, but then you can't participate anymore. So again, it's made so that it's here to help kids. It's not here to, we got 10 today, and we're nothing like that. Nothing is ever reported to the police or anything. It's all strictly confidential. The only people that know anything would be our designated personnel, and we're very specific on certain words. In other words, secretaries, other teachers, coaches, we don't talk to about anything about the program. As a matter of fact, we suggest that if something did happen, like Johnny was positive, now he needs to be dinged 20%. While he may be the first one to text or tweet out, the whole story, officially you should say, Coach, Johnny is ineligible for 2 games. Well, why? Because he's ineligible for 2 games, and that's it.
Now, did you say that once they've tested positive, then they are mandatorily tested again?
No, they are not. Because what happened, we used to do some things like that, but the second test is always going to be negative and it's always going to be dilute. But if a parent, there's lots of checks and balance here. What we were saying, sometimes we do have parents that say, no, not my kid. Absolutely not. Can't happen. Okay, no, I understand. We have some different things you can go by to remedy that situation. First, talk to the maybe principal, whatever the internal appeals process is through the school. But if they want to, they can take that same sample, because again, if it was a different sample, it would always be negative, always dilute, and have it tested at another certified lab. Now, it's a little expensive. The labs charge more for that. It's like $150, $200 for that. But if it's a different result, we will pick up that cost. Now, over the years, I've been doing this about 20 years. About every year, we have one or two parents that say they want to do that. But so far, I don't think we've had any. Have we? Any that you know of?
No.
We have not had any that actually did it. Why? Again, I'm a parent, so this process would take a couple days back and forth between it going to the lab and mom and dad saying nope, and then talking to the school and everything. And I think what happens, at least what would happen with my kids, is every day it'd be like, okay, I'm supporting you. I am going to back you, and we're going to talk this out. We're going to get this fixed. That's not quite the story, though. Wait, it happened a little different on Monday than what you said today. And then I think eventually they say they come clean with what happened, and they admit to it. And I've heard that from some schools, but again, we don't ask all the questions and get into the personal part of the school.
What type of problems have you experienced? You've been in a lot of districts over the years. Are there a few issues that seem to arise more frequently than others with the program from the whole scheme of things?
When you're first starting the program, I can understand that, this is your community, and you, as a board, you've been elected, so you're here to represent your community and such. So the first thing that seems to be a little bit scary with the whole thing is the things that you hear from some of the parents. Like, oh, this should be done at home, not at the school. And you know what? I own a company that does this, and I agree, but situation's different than it used to be, 10, 20 years ago with the opioid crisis and drug testing. But what you'll find is, statistically, if you're like any other community in Ohio that we've talked to in the last few years, a lot of the schools have done surveys ahead of time, and between 75 and 85% of parents are going to be for the program, according to the surveys. And what I found really interesting is when kids are surveyed, lately it's been coming back 50+% kids are for the program. That surprised the heck out of me. I thought it would be like 99.9% are against, kids are, leave me alone and such. You will have a minority that is ideologically opposed, and they'll be more vocal with it because that's just how they are. A lot of parents, and I got to admit, I'd probably be one on a lot of issues. It's like, oh, you want to do drug testing? Good for you. A meeting? I'm good. So the bottom line with all that is that you may hear a few people that just really don't like it, but what happens after the first test and such, and they find out that it isn't really a big deal for the kids, it just kind of goes away. And once we come in and do the testing, honestly, we've kind of fine-tuned the whole process over the years to make it the least intrusive both for the school administration and for the kids. Because again, they're here to do, reading, writing, arithmetic and such. And we don't want to make this an all-day process like, oh, this is drug testing day. That's why we're saying that their typical time is, 5 minutes or so, and then they're back to class.
Are you available for meetings, if we have informational meetings?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I kind of like them in the fact that, honestly, we've heard an awful lot of the questions before, so I like to address them so that sometimes people kind of, like I said, they think that, oh, this is something that we're just really punishing the kids, whatever, when it's absolutely not. So we can come to board meetings, we can come to committee meetings, and like a lot of times there's like, once you roll out the program, there's also like a parent meeting, like here's an informational thing about what's happening. And we can alleviate some of the things, like, yes, some of the medications your child may be on, no one's going to know about. They're irrelevant. If they're not going to pop on a drug test, You don't need to know about them. I don't need to know about them. The school doesn't need to know about them. And if they are something that would be positive on a drug test, that maybe it's an anti-anxiety medication, or maybe, whatever it is, we are thoroughly confidential, and we're not going to broadcast that to anybody at any time. And if it's cleared by the MRO because of prescription, then it's just done. It's like, this was a non-negative, now it's negative. They're good to go.
How much does each test cost?
Good question. It varies. In the back, I think page or two, right, of those pamphlets there is a price list. We don't have like, here is the drug test. That scares me a little bit because I'm afraid that kids might figure out like, well, here's all they're testing for. It would be great to test all the kids for everything, but you can't afford it. So what we do is have like a cafeteria style testing process. A 5-panel test is kind of average. We can do 5 panels, 10 panels, et cetera. But a 5-panel test isn't just the same 5 like it is for truck drivers and bus drivers. Marijuana, cocaine, and opiates, unfortunately nowadays, they're basically always on the test. But the other 2 drugs, they can be mixed around. It could be Oxycontin, it could be meth, whatever. You could give us a call. Like, let's say you heard through students, social media, whatever, Oxycontin's going around. You can say, hey, that's been going around our school. Can you make sure that's on the test? And we will do that. 5-panel test, $15. You can have add-ons to that also. And you don't have to stick with like just one test. You can mix and match as many times a year as you want. One of the add-ons I like to advertise, more or less, is called ETG alcohol. It's an alcohol test that goes back 80 hours. So you might have some kids that think, go ahead and have your drug test program. I'll pound down a 6-pack on Saturday night, and you test Monday, Tuesday, breathalyzer, it's not going to catch anything, and they're right. But the ETG alcohol test, it will. It's a little bit more expensive. It's about $20 for that particular test, but you don't have to use it all the time. Some schools do use it all the time. Some schools use it occasionally, especially after it seems like certain activities, like maybe prom or homecoming or something like that. But all you would do is say, hey, next Thursday, we're going to be doing a test. Let's do the 5-panel and nicotine, or let's do the 10-panel, or let's do the 5-panel plus ETG, or let's just do a plain 5-panel. So you can have a lot of flexibility, and we can help you with your budget that way. So, we can kind of give you a baseline budget that says, okay, if you have 1,000 kids in your school, and if you do this program and you do parking and extracurricular, et cetera, you're going to have about 85% people that will be involved in the program if you're like every other school. So then we take that 850 and times 15, and you're only going to do half of your kids fine. So you see, we'll go through the math with you and get a budget that will work for you. We don't have any minimums or anything. I mean, we probably won't come out if it's like, well, we're going to do like 1 kid a month, but we don't have any wait times, we don't have any drive times or anything like that. We bill on a per test basis. So if you say, we want to do 30 kids with a 5-panel test, great, and we do all 30, there you go, it's $450, that's it, done.
And I assume the kids never know what they're being tested for.
We will never tell them what they're tested for. We have had only like once or twice, like some parents say, I want to know exactly what they're being tested for, and I won't tell them. What if we weren't testing for opioids? What if we weren't testing, like Oxycontin is a synthetic opioid that you have to test for specifically. What if they found out that you weren't testing for that? And maybe they were, pot's not good for them to do either, but maybe they're smoking some pots, like, oh, they always do pot, but they don't do Oxycontin, so maybe I'll just switch. Won't be responsible for that. So we tell nobody but our designated person or persons with that.
Typically, how often do you test in a school year?
That's another good question with another vague answer. It's random. And the more random you can make it, the better. For example, it would seem logical, like, okay, you're going to test, let's do 800 kids. And you know what, there's 9 months in the year, so let's do about 75 kids like once a month. But if you do that, I swear, a kid will be flunking stats, but they'll pick up on that right away that, oh, second Monday, huh? Okay, this is the second Tuesday, I'm good to go. So we suggest to make it truly random as much as you can. I mean, you could stagger things. You don't have to, get crazy with it. But I do suggest, for example, every now and then, make sure you test twice in the same week. And you don't have to double up your amounts necessarily, but test twice in the same week. Maybe test back-to-back days. You only need to do that once every now and then, because hopefully then when kids are thinking, hey, they already tested this week, we could party tonight. It's like, remember last year they came Monday and Tuesday? I don't trust that. So you try to make it as random as possible. But you can generally say, look, we're going to try to do about X number of kids per the budget, and don't necessarily want to be coming in like every other day because you guys have other things to do, but we can work with you with that.
I think that truly random sampling piece that they were talking about was one of the districts we talked to tried to keep it monthly, but they would come in at the end of one month and then turn around and come immediately back in sometimes the next month. So that covered your 2-month span, but the kids couldn't figure out when they were coming. The second part of that is the names never totally come out of the system. So even though you've been tested, you're right back in and could come up
Yes.
again at the next test.
Yeah, you're never like, oh, I got picked, so I'm good for the year. It's always you're in the pool. A couple other things I didn't mention just real quick. What about the kids that aren't doing anything? They don't drive, they don't play any sports, whatever. How can they take advantage of this program? And it's called our opt-in program. For the cost of whatever you want to make it, you can send the paperwork home, or if you do it electronically, however your school does it now, mom and dad can say, you know what, I want Johnny to be in the program. And then he's in the list just like everybody else. What happens if Johnny gets a positive? You tell mom and dad, which I would always hope that would kind of be the most important thing anyway to a kid, but advantage of a program that way. So, and additionally, what about your kids that are going to like the vocational schools and such? They're not excluded. Yours is you're lucky you got one like right next door, but a lot of times schools have they're a number of miles away. But let's take our neck of the woods, Penta Career Center, for example. We go right to Penta Career Center, not necessarily every time. Like let's say that we're going to do 30 kids, and 2 of them happen to be at the Career Center. We may go that same day, especially since it's close here, or maybe the next time we come, we'll pick up like 2 or 4, or once they get a few kids there, we'll come in and do it then. So they're not excluded just because they're at your other location there. We will go there for them.
Any other questions?
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here this night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Would you be interested in us moving forward with any kind of timeline?
By timeline, what do you mean?
We would put a process in place in terms of how we start rolling this out. Who we would start talking to next. For example, coaches, then parents, students. When would we like to start? How would we like to get it going? What our policy, when that would be developed, when you would vote on that, et cetera.
I'm in favor of it. I'll speak up. I deal with people who have drug and alcohol issues probably on a weekly basis, and if we can get kids to stop at a younger age, maybe we'll help them when they're older. So.
I'll be off the board, but I certainly support it.
I support it.
I can completely understand why we'd be doing it, and if we can stop one kid or help one kid, it would be worth it.
So this does not obviously approve the program, but what we'll do then is start putting some things together. We'll work directly with coaches, make sure they're aware. We'll invite our guests back to talk to them, parents. We'll make sure we have plenty of parent and student meetings. and we'll start putting together a policy that we could roll out to you to take a look at, and we'll make sure we develop that to meet our needs then. All right, very good. Thank you again. Gentlemen, you're welcome to leave if you'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we are hosting the board meeting at the Piqua High School. So as always, when we host at the school, we always have the principal come forward and give an academic update. So Mr. Messick is going to come forward and give us an academic update. And then following that, Mr. Messick is the program of studies for PHS. So you're welcome to move right into that if you'd like.
Okay. I do want to kind of just some of the conversation. When we went and met with some other schools, I was talking to the principal and how many parents opted in for kids that were not, part of sports, that they just wanted to get their kid involved just so they could become more aware. So I thought that was pretty interesting when we had that conversation. Just for a quick update, we've been working a lot off of what as you guys probably already know, we met this summer as an administrative team and really worked on our goals as a district and on into the building. And we're looking for the ways that we could best influence instruction and have the greatest impact on our students. So how are we doing this at the high school? At the high school, as well with the other buildings, we felt that our teachers were putting together sound lessons based on the content standards. However, was the student product and the instructional depth truly meeting the level of knowledge required by those standards? And what I mean is that, as you guys all know, one of the biggest things that we have to do is the air test. It's the end-of-year courses, and our students goes on the grade cards. And ultimately, more importantly, it's our students' graduation. They have to be able to perform on these tests. And so we're really taking a look at, are we meeting the needs of that test? Is our instruction meeting the needs, and is the student product, all right, that we're expecting, is it the same as what is expected on the test? So what we did was we we asked those questions to our BLT team, building leadership team. It's made up of about, I think we got 14 teachers plus the administration, and we meet regularly to discuss our building goals. The BLT team decided that we needed to collect some data so that we could make some informed decisions. The team decided they would do a series of walkthroughs that concentrated on the following: daily learning targets that reflected Ohio learning standards, students being able to verbalize learning expectations. So our teachers were actually going into other teachers' rooms and asking some of their students, hey, what are we learning today in this room? It's pretty neat. And also high level of questionings and a high level of student products, where they actually producing those higher order thinking, asking higher order questions, and are the student products related to those higher ordered skills. After about 2 data collection cycles, we felt confident that we were addressing the standards and students understood the expectations for learning. When it came to high-level questioning student products that reflected those high levels, we felt there was some room for improvement. We did a big graph, and we felt like there was about 30% of the classes that we visited, over 100, just randomly, we didn't feel like we were meeting the needs of those that high-level questioning. So how we started is we started asking each staff member to look critically at their student work and their instructional strategies to see if they are meeting the depth of knowledge of 3 and 4. All right, and I'll explain what that means here. The expectation is that these 2 levels involve student products that include strategic thinking and extended thinking. So the students need to be explaining, comparing, citing, analyzing, and critiquing. Because what we were finding is that if we go into a classroom and we say, okay, I'm going to give an example of, we're going to give a social studies example. One of the big skills that they have to do is on the air test is be able to compare an anti-federalist view with a federalist view, okay? Well, if you define anti-federalist and you define federalist, are you truly making that comparison between the 2 of them instead of just identifying? And so those are the things that we're looking at. Are we not forcing the kids, wrong way of saying that. Are we getting the kids to actually truly compare and analyze that work, or are we just doing memorization? And so those were some difficult questions. We had to go through some tests, look at stuff, going through the walkthroughs, and like I said, we felt that there was a need. So some of the steps that we're currently taking. Each of the department chairs have been working with the curriculum department. They've been having meetings to clarify what are depth of knowledge 3 and 4 questions, and the projects and the student works that they should be getting for their individual subject areas. We also know that the district PD is going to be on the 2nd, right? January 2nd is going to be a major focus, is the depth of knowledge. And then once that happens, we get everybody calibrated, we're going to go ahead and start doing that walkthrough process again. And it's been great because the teachers are the ones doing the walkthroughs on each other. It's not just the administration, and it's been really helpful because they're able to sit down and talk about it a little bit differently, and they don't feel like it's us saying do this. It's more like a good professional conversation. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I mean, I can talk about some of the other things that the Procore and the standards testing that we're doing. But like I said, you've probably heard a lot of that from the other principals. A couple other highlights I do want to mention is we have just learned that we'll be getting a resource officer here at Piqua High School. They're going to be Piqua Schools has a resource officer, but they're going to be housed here. We set up an office, so they're going to be able to come here. And our biggest, when we talked to Chief about this, it was we need to make sure that we have somebody here so our kids can go to them and make those relationships and make those connections. So we're very excited about that. Should be starting January 1st is what we heard on that. Otherwise, things are pretty good. We got our course book coming in. There's a couple highlights. You guys will be approving that. A couple of things. We are actually going to have a sophomore government class added. We're going to take a little pilot, take a look at that, and it's really to target some of the kids that go to the Career Center, because right now they do government over there, and we want to get them in front of our government teacher. He does a great job, so we want to try to get them their government credit before they head over to the Career Center. The other thing, we are also adding, we're structuring our business program. We attended a Success Bound conference, and what it is how to get your students a little bit more career direction. And it's actually going to take us about 3 to 4 years to get through this whole process. And really what it ultimately is that with our business partners is to find ways to get our kids real experiences way beyond just field trips, but actually getting into the, almost like an internship type thing, spending a couple weeks in businesses. So to prepare for that would be coming up in their junior and senior year of the current 8th graders. To prepare for that, we needed to do a career explorations course. So we've eliminated the way that our current business offerings are, and we're going to offer this career explorations. We're going to be searching out business partners to help us with that. We're going to have focus every 2 weeks is going to be a focus on certain types of careers, and try to get as much community members, business people in to our building so that they have a chance to meet with our kids, try to make some of those connections early. We have found, when we were doing our research, that any time a school has made considerable in their performance, graduation rates and everything, there's always been a strong career connection. Our kids today, they need to see it now. Planning for 4 years is difficult. They need to see it now. They want to see what's going on. Why do I need this? And I want to know right now. And the last thing I do want to say is we just got word today that we have a kid, Cameron Brown, has been accepted to Harvard. So we're very excited about that. So that's pretty impressive. With all that being, do you guys have any questions for me? I'm sorry, I'm rattling through stuff quickly. Good? Got this.
Thank you, Mr. Mystic. Mr. Clark, would you like to come forward and share a little bit about your program of studies at the junior high school?
Yes, for our program of studies, very minimal changes. we needed to reflect some of our things that happen just naturally. One of the things we were able to offer last year that we no longer offer is American Sign Language as an elective course. The demand at the high school was so great, which is a good thing, that her day was full here at Piqua High School. So we wanted to go back, we needed to go back and reflect that. When we got it approved last year, it was still in the course of studies. Also, some other elective courses that we no longer are able to offer. So very, very minimal, just cleanup kind of changes. So should look very similar to last year's. Questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Next is the school calendar, and you'll be voting on that here shortly with the agenda. Just a quick note that the calendar committee is made up of staff members, community members, administrators. Each building has representation that seeks feedback from their staff. They bring the ideas to the committee and share those out and try to share out different versions of calendars, and then they narrow it down to a couple of choices that then goes out to staff for their feedback. They'll ultimately vote on which one they think is the best. The committee tried to really stick to a student-centered focus for the academic setting. The main points that they looked at this year was trying to get more instructional days prior to our state testing. They looked at trying to get the earliest release after testing. That's based on data that we've collected over the last 2 years for any kind of discipline referrals that we get. We have a tracking system for that, and our attendance drops significantly after Memorial Day in particularly, but also our discipline referrals increase significantly. So calendar committee wanted to try to address some of those issues. They felt it was important to offer breaks throughout the year. They thought that students and staff both benefited from the breaks such as Thanksgiving, Christmas time, and spring break. And secondary level was interested in having the semester end prior to Christmas break beginning, because many times they'll go to Christmas break and there's that big lull there, and then they'll come back and have a week or two where they've got to do a lot of review and a lot of intensive kind of projects and get everything as much as they can in before students do those mid-year tests that end the quarter, or the semester rather. And then you got to try to keep kids' eligibility and their grades up. So ending it prior to Christmas break allows all those tests and projects to be completed going into the break, so when they come back, they get that fresh start into the second semester. New to the calendar, we added the kindergarten registration dates. It's very important that we get those parents that have kindergartners coming in for the next year in, so that we can get good ideas on numbers for staffing, that we understand between the difference between Washington and Spring Creek, how many students we're going to have there, and we want to make sure we get as many students in as we can so we can get that good sense of what we're going to be dealing with our new class that's coming in. So we added those to the calendar this year to make sure the public's aware of those dates. Questions on the calendar?
Here's my big issue with it. You're going to end second period on the 21st of December. Being a kid who used to get in trouble about their grade card, can we give them their grade cards after Christmas?
With your lump of coal? Good question.
Just wondering.
That sounds like a voice of experience.
It was there, believe me.
Any other questions on that part? Okay. Next, we're going to move on to the bowling report. We do those twice a year. We do those in December and in June. Mr. Lyons heads that up and works with our principals on that. You're going to hear him talk a lot about our concerted effort this year, but we really felt like last year we did not have enough students that were really aware of how to report bowling. As we worked through situations with students, we just felt like we needed to make that concentrated effort, and I think the principals have done a great job of that. Anytime I work with a parent or a student or Mr. Lyons and we get any hint of not just bullying, but just inappropriate behavior, we really try to make sure that parents and students have an understanding of how to go to our website, how to report that, and they can do it anonymously or with information. We try to get as much information as possible so we can do a really good investigation into the situation, and we've done a lot of follow-up with principals, and I'll again let him talk, but I just think our principals have done a really good job this first half of the year, and not only getting students to register their concerns, but addressing them and following up and dealing with parents and students on an ongoing basis. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Lyons to talk about our report.
So with that, one of the things we heard too in talking to parents last year was we would hear that kind of wow factor. There's a spot where I can go to report a bullying incident. So awareness was a big factor, especially for our kids. So what I hope you see here is that our reported incidents are up significantly from this time last year. And I think what you'll hear from our principals is that there's an effort to make sure that our kids know how to report. So when you look through, I've redacted the names and the information of the reporters and things like that. But what you'll see here is most of these are student reports. So at the junior high and intermediate school especially, you see a high volume of reported incidents. What you don't see necessarily is, and I've included the actual report in the packet there, but the work that's gone on to help alleviate that situation. So out of those reports, 4 of those were actual, we could say, are identifiable bullying situations that were dealt with by our principals in our buildings. The other ones were also things like harassment, or what we would consider a harassment issue, or a one-time identifiable issue that could have led to bullying that they dealt with. So those were included in our yeses too, because we thought it was important to include those in there. Also, what we found is our kids are reporting things that aren't necessarily bullying, but had they not used this vehicle to get that information out, they wouldn't have gone down to the office to report it. So we found some great information on our kids to help them. In some cases, we've gotten children's services involved, police involved, and helped to protect children because either they or a friend of one of theirs was willing to step up and report on behalf of one of our kiddos. So volume's up for reports, and I think that's a good sign because our kids are reporting. We don't want bad things to happen, so it's not positive, but they're using the system for what it's supposed to be. So what I include in the packet is the report that we have here, and this is all based on Public School Works. It's our data collection system that we use. You have each one of the 59 reports in the packet, including the details of those, because I think last year that was one of the questions was, I think one of the kiddos put in here, I don't like broccoli. We're going to get that. We know that we're going to have some of those things that are false reports, and it's easy enough for the principals to put those away. But then, again, some of those are so much more urgent that we get notified, in some cases on the weekends or after midnight by our system that will let us know that we've got something a little more urgent and we need to deal with it. So the final 2 pages are location, giving you a couple charts there of the location of the incidents and then what each of the results were. So more importantly than the report, I think, is the work that the building principals and their leadership teams are doing in the buildings, making sure that not only do they head it off and deal with it with discipline when necessary, but also making sure that our students have the right supports in place when, in fact, they identify something that's serious, ongoing, pervasive, whatever it may be. So I've asked the building principals to share out briefly some of the things that they're doing at each one of the buildings to help with the bullying situation when we have it. It's up to you guys.
Real quick before they begin, just a quick note that one of our administrators' father has passed away, and his viewing is tonight, and many of the administrators would like to get to that event while there's time. So as the principals do their reports, we've told them that if you don't have any further questions for them, that they may leave to get down there and support their peers. So as you guys finish up your reports, you're welcome to head that direction.
Thank you. At Piqua Junior High School, multiple things going on. And just to kind of briefly touch on those, number one was from day one, all teachers worked with kids in setting our PBIS expectations of being respectful, being responsible, and being kind, and that kind of lays the groundwork for treating each other the right way. Mr. Albers, Chad Albers, our assistant principal, met with each team of students. We're divided into 4 teams, 2 at each grade level. And he took some time during intramurals and had a discussion with each team and talked about the online reporting system and what kinds of things could be and should be reported there. He also talks frequently with students as they come in on an individual basis and directs them to that vehicle. He was ahead of the game on that one, I think. He was somebody who did that a lot in the past really utilized that system the way it should be. Both on a large scale and on an individual scale, they're doing a lot of things. Our guidance department, Tony Riley's doing an awesome job working again individually with students, but also she started an initiative this year. She worked with a small group of teachers and even some students and spruced up our girls' restrooms with some really nice, if you follow us on social media at all, just a lot of positivity plastered all over our girls' bathroom walls. Some paintings, some notes, some things like that are all just very encouraging, very positive messages that our young ladies, when they go to the restroom every day, they're seeing those in every restroom at Piqua Junior High School. So really trying to pump up the positivity, and she does an awesome job of following up with students individually as well. So that's Piqua Junior High School.
At Piqua High School, one of the things that is somewhat new, and definitely new for all students, is our advisory time that we have on a daily basis. And there weekly, we are doing character education. For instance, this week is being tolerant and having lessons and videos and discussions based on that. In the fall, we had approximately 100 students participate in a full day training with Rachel's Challenge. With that, I'm talking about kindness and respecting people's differences. Again, and that was volunteer. So students were seeking to get information on that here at Piqua High School. The PBIS system is in full effect, which is promoting positive behaviors, and again, it goes along with our advisory time. And then one thing that we're looking at is social media and having discussions starting this Friday. We have our advisory teachers are going to be looking at safety and responsible sharing in social media, and so that we're not only doing it here at school, but then also in that avenue. And then, of course, the anonymous reporting system for the students. So they're well aware of that, and we've gotten some really good leads based on that. So that's what's going on at Piqua High School.
I'll speak for the primaries. At the primary, we're a little bit different. We are trying to make sure the kids understand what bullying is. They have a different perception. They'll hear their parents saying, well, you're being bullied at school. So what we try to do is work with the kids so they have a true understanding of what bullying is. We have it in their own terms that they understand, and they know they can come to myself or Mr. Lauterbach. And we've had, one parent possibly call at the beginning of the year, and we were able to address that right away. And the parent had a different perception of what bullying was too. So in the primaries, we use it as a means and to also help the kids understand of how another person might feel. That's what we're doing in primary.
I'm filling in for Mrs. Troglin this evening. We were in a meeting prior to this, and she became ill. So I told her rather than coming and sharing all her germs with us, she gave me her paper and I'd fill it in. So at Washington, she shared that Maria Oldegas, the counselor there, is following the same type of Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 model that we use instructionally. Tier 1 being instruction that all kids get, and the counselor is going into every classroom and teaching lessons on bullying throughout the school year. For Tier 2, teachers are recommending students for small group work, and Mrs. Oldegas is meeting weekly with small groups of students to work on that. And for Tier 3, recommendations are made for some students to receive individual attention, and she meets one-on-one with those children as appropriate. She provides feedback to the classroom teachers. They provide feedback to her, and the teachers can make recommendations at any time depending upon what they observe happening. Pam Locker, one of our intervention specialists, is working with individual students. And she is working very hard on coming up with common language and the same types of strategies so that when students are meeting in small groups or she's working with them one-on-one, the things that they're working on, she's going back into the classroom, helping make sure the teacher understands what they were working on and gives them time to utilize what they've learned in the classroom, and she's right there to give support and feedback to reinforce it so that it's not a they heard it one time and then it's gone kind of thing, but there's constant reinforcement so the kids, so it can become habitual behavior and attitudes and words and speaking instead of isolated kinds of teaching moments. In the building, PBIS, the students all know the expectations about being respectful, responsible, and kind. All teachers, all staff, including teachers, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, everyone, they have a system in place for rewarding students for positive behavior and giving them specific feedback. The students are given a lot of instruction around the concepts, and it's referred to in all situations that present a need. So they're trying to be really consistent in their message to students. They also have a PBIS committee that is looking to focus on a broad skill each month, and each week there's a focus on a specific skill in the classroom then. So they're finding parts of being responsible, parts of being kind, and specifically teaching that to students in the classroom setting. The teachers are focusing on PBIS in all areas of the building: classrooms, hallway, cafeteria, playground. And then the administrators are investigating every bullying incident quickly and effectively. They're working with the counselors, the teachers, the PBIS committee to keep prevention as the main focus. And when a bullying incident does occur, the teachers and the students make preventing future occurrences the top priority, whether that be through intervention or the teaching aspect of it. So hopefully you don't have any questions.
Thank you for delivering that. Josh?
And Josh, that was the handout, the additional handout I passed down was from Piqua Central Intermediate.
Good evening. Josh, I
Yes.
didn't know if you're going to go down to Eric's thing, but I did have a question I want to ask now, so you could,
Sure.
as you're going. I'm just curious, I didn't ask the other secondaries this. I was just wondering, how was it with third grade coming in, having a year under their belt as fourth graders? Did you notice a difference?
Of what particular?
Behavior with PBIS.
Oh, yeah, I think PBIS has been a game changer district-wide. It's definitely helped with the consistencies, the 5 buildings. Every one of us that look at that every month at our ad team meetings are showing a significant drop in our behavior. So I think that the principles that are things that are in place there, it's working, it's effective, it's doing what it's supposed to do. So.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to be relatively brief. PBIS, as I said, is working the Indian way, what we do at our building. I think it's still in its year 2 and it works. One of the things that we really focused on this year, and I'm just going to hit the highlights, you can look at this later. We kind of developed a slogan at our place of going to bat to combat bullying, and essentially we were doing a lot of things with like threat assessment teams. It's kind of along the same lines when we work with outside agencies and wraparound services. What we did was developed an additional team, and I put all those individuals at the top. I actually have our chair of that team here tonight, Ms. Jones, who heads this thing up alongside myself. And essentially what we have is, we follow the same procedure as everybody else, the online reporting. Guidance counselor educates every student in the first 2 weeks of school, all 800 of them. They know where to report. They know what bullying is. They know what to do as far as a bystander. We try to educate those that are standing around the incident to take a stand. I think our numbers, I haven't seen them from Mr. Lyons, but I'm assuming we probably have more than any. When you tell a 10, 11-year-old, 10, 11, 12-year-old individual, here's a place you can report something, I'm happy to see numbers up of kids standing up. In some cases, you'll have 2 or 3 kids report on the same incident. And that's empowering to young individuals to be able to do that, which I think is incredible. But essentially, if you flip to the second and third page there, I put what we call the bullying assessment team worksheet. We would fill that out with our team at the table of everybody that's relevant and involved in that student's day. We also felt that it hits on the time, the type of bullying, where it was at, witnesses, and then on the backside, probably the most meaningful piece to us is that bullying follow-up. What I really enjoy is going to individuals that have either come across and submitted a report, but following up with them and their parents to see if anything has happened since that episode. And that's something that I think's paid dividends at our place when you go up there and say, you know what, it wasn't just a one and done incident. We actually follow up with them and say, has there been any episodes since we've met and we've kind of gone to bat for you? And I'm happy to report every time that I've gone, it's shut down. So that's the cool thing about, we've raised awareness, we've empowered students, and then we're shutting down things, and things are getting fixed. And I think that's reassuring to parents that, the schools are doing something about it, because, for so long the perception is we don't. And we absolutely take that very seriously. So that follow-up piece on the backside there is key. I also want to just mention that me and Mr. Clark attended the OMLA State Conference, and one of the sessions we went to dealt with the book Wonder, and it was actually a professor out of Ohio Northern that talked about how we prevent some of the things, and we're getting ready to roll out some stuff with both our students and our staff members. And I didn't attach it to your sheet, but we went through a session about how we're more of an oral culture versus a written culture, and one of the ways to combat bullying is to get to know each other below a surface level. And essentially, if I know your story and you know my story, we're less likely to bully each other. It's that come to the line activity type of mentality where you step up to the line and we share common things. So I might have come from a divorced family, you might have come from a divorced family. Now we share a story, and when you share stories and you know each other at a deep level, you're less likely to be mean to one another. So I thought that was a really powerful event that both me and Mr. Clark at the junior high got to see and be a part of. So we're rolling that out. So do you have any questions for me?
Thanks, Josh. So we obviously spent much more time on this than we ever have in the past, but to say that we aren't going to shed more light on it doesn't make sense. We need to put it out there. We need to make our kids aware, which the principals and staff members are doing. They have, again, a vehicle to get that information out there and hopefully get resolution. So we'll continue to follow this path, and again, update you in June, I believe.
In the past, sometimes if a student came in and reported what they thought was a bullying situation, they might not have put it on the online piece. We have principals now that are actually sitting with the kid and making sure they fill out the report. They used to just kind of take care of it and move on, but we really want to collect that data because we do meet monthly. We go over discipline data. It includes everything from where it's happening to what time of the day, those kinds of things. So we're able to pinpoint times of the year, even that things are happening and where it's happening. So that just helps us further with our curriculum and the kinds of programs that we put in place. So I really applaud the principals for not fearing this data, but really making sure it's all inclusive and that kids get that in there so that we can put some plans and programs in place that'll ultimately fix things. So any questions on that? The last thing on there is Children's International Summer Village, or CISV. They have used our facilities in the past and have requested again this summer for a program through June 27th through July 16th. They've been great to work with. They've done a good job of making sure they maintain our facilities well and work with us well. And they pay for the rental fees and all the services that they use. So there's a contract there that I'll be seeking your approval for as well. For no questions on that, just would like to congratulate our music programs. We've had great choral and instrumental programs this season. I hope the citizens have had a chance to come out and see those. We always put those on the calendar, and right after the first of the year, we'll have all the spring concerts that'll be coming up. We try to get those out twice a year so that people can plan ahead. And if you haven't seen those programs, try to come out in the spring if you can. Those are great to see. And our Christmas break will begin next Friday, December 22nd. Staff will return on January 2nd for training. They'll do some of the curriculum things that you've heard some principals mention tonight. We will also do a round of ALICE training, which is the training that the Piqua Police Department will work with us on for if there's any intruders in the building. That's an important thing that we do each year for follow-up. And finally, Jeff Markinet, Piqua grad, will come and be a closing guest speaker to talk about sticking with it and really following through. He's going to be a great guest speaker for our staff to hear to kick off the second half of the year. And then our students will return on January 3rd to begin the third quarter and second semester. Any questions? Okay.
We'll move on to the superintendent's agenda.
Recommend board approval of the attached list of donations. Several donations there coming in for some of the programs we have, everything from Glen Helen to our show choir. Of significant interest is Harmony Systems purchased several school supply kits for students. We actually have 2 large skids of supplies ready to get distributed to students, and we'll be working on a plan to make sure that they get those out to our students, and we're pleased with that. Recommend the board approval of the attached list of grants. These grants are all from the Piqua Community Foundation, a great resource to our schools and students, and we're very thankful for what they are offering us. Recommending the board approval for the attached facility usage agreement between Piqua City Schools and the Miami County CISV. I'd like to recommend board approval of the attached list of textbooks for disposal and removal from the inventory of Piqua City School District. These are actually from the Seventh-day Adventist. They purchased those through us, and they're no longer needing them, so we're going to dispose of them for them. Recommend board approval of the attached Piqua City School District 2018-2019 school calendar. Recommend board approval of the Piqua School 2018-19 program of studies for the Piqua High School. They did have one addendum on there that they did not get into that, so we'll read that separately, and then they'll get that incorporated into the actual program. But would like to recommend the board approval of the attached Wright State University Calculus 3 course of study for the 18-19 school year for Piqua High School. And then finally, recommend the board approval of the Piqua Junior High School 2018-2019 program of studies.
Okay, we will need a motion to approve the superintendent's agenda.
So moved.
And we have a motion and a second. Mr. Hiddle, please call the roll.
Mr. Height.
Aye.
Mr. Bostic.
Aye.
Mr. Gregerson.
Aye.
Mr. Patrizio.
Aye.
Mr. Luby.
Aye. Moving on to the personnel agenda. Mr. Lyons.
Thank you. Just one area I would like to highlight. Becky Jenkins, as you can see on there, a longtime cook and head cook for us at Piqua City Schools, has made her decision to retire, and we're very happy for her. And I'd just like to say tonight, thank you to Becky for her service. I'll always put out the word, volunteers, come in, get your fingerprints done, and we can get you on the list to get into the schools, support our students. And of course, as always, always looking for substitute custodians, food service workers, bus drivers, those kinds of things. Contact me at the board office. We will be offering the civil service test on January 11th at 6 p.m. at the Board of Education, once again, for those positions as we're governed by civil service. Outside of that, pretty typical personnel agenda as far as leaves and things like that. And at this point, I'd like to recommend board approval of the personnel agenda as presented.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Hiddle, please call the roll.
Mr. Gregerson.
Aye.
Mr. Patrizio.
Aye.
Mr. Height.
Aye.
Mr. Luby.
Aye.
Mr. Bostic.
Aye.
We have nothing under old business, so moving on to new business. We need to review potential dates for the January 2018 Board of Education organizational meeting.
I provided you a list of potential dates. This is based on when we normally host these. We try to avoid, of course, holidays and then the other special events, but would ask our 2 new board members that are sitting out there, as well as our returning board members, to look at their calendars, validate these dates will be okay, and pending that everybody agrees with them, we'll get those posted out, make sure the media has those so everybody's aware of our dates. Do you guys have copies of those?
Also, we'll have to appoint a president pro tem for the January 2018 organizational meeting.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Patrizio
Okay.
as a possible person for that.
Frank, you agree to that?
That's fine.
Okay. And, of course, we talked about potential dates for regular Board of Education meetings for 2018, and everybody has a list of those potential dates. So we'll look those over and make a decision.
Then
And-
I'm sorry, we'll need to pick a date for the organizational meeting.
Okay.
I think we have to do that in the first 10 days, January. Anyone have a recommendation? Thursday, January 4th work?
It's fine.
Yeah.
4 p.m.
Kelly, Sean, with the 4th, 4 p.m.? I would like to recommend also on that date, we would like to invite Steve and Bob back to come. January is Board Appreciation Month, and while we induct our new board members in, we would like to do a special thank you for the board members that are leaving, as you've spent your whole career basically with education significantly affecting the education in this community, and the schools have prepared some special things for you, and we'd like to recognize you. And I would like to, since the organizational meeting is usually pretty quick, perhaps have an open house where we can invite the public to come and say thank you for the things that you've done. So would Steve and Bob be willing to come back on the 4th at 4 p.m. So we could do that as well?
Sure.
Okay, very good.
Steve?
I will
You'd
get
be okay
a
with-
public invite out and make sure everybody is aware of that. Are there any
And-
discrepancies on the meeting dates and times for January?
For January or past January?
Any of them?
I know that I'm going to have a conflict on July 26th. If we could move it to the day before, that'd be wonderful. Scary, I know that far ahead.
It's fine.
Is that okay with everybody else?
Which month?
We're going to be at Washington that night for the board meeting.
Andy, what date do you need it to
We
be
can
July
move it.
1?
If we could do July 25th.
What
that'd
time
be
will your
wonderful.
meeting be? Okay. I will mention something to Tracy about the time on that. Any other conflicts? Yeah.
Mr. Thompson, that's picture day too?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll get photos of the new board members and get those on the website so we can have that posted.
And we get that cleared up, Dwayne?
I'm sorry?
We're all okay with
I
that
think
now?
so. Yep.
Okay. And the last item under new business, recommend board approval of the attached real estate purchase contract.
Yes, we were contacted a couple months ago from a lawyer who was representing own land out by the high school, wanting to know if we would be interested in protecting our flanks or securing any property. It made sense for us to take a look at that because it was so difficult for us to find land when we looked at the building project for the new schools. And we don't have any pending projects coming forward, but knowing that this is all within that campus area, we went and had a discussion. They were able to sell it to us at a great rate. They were very interested in the schools purchasing it because they knew that it was going to go for a good purpose. Again, we have no need to build on it right now. We'll continue to lease it and farm it out. We'll be using money to purchase this from land that we've already sold that we've just had in reserves right now, so it's not going to be a cost to taxpayers. And as we continue to lease this out, that money will go back to replenishing that. So ultimately, we'll be able to secure the land and really at no cost over time. So our hope is decades down the road, if the district has to do anything, they'll be thankful for having this opportunity and land that'll be very well positioned within the campus out there. So it was just a good opportunity for us to work through.
Additionally, one of the things is it's still able to be farmed. It's farm ground at the moment, and so we can basically generate $10,800 or so off of renting out that farmland, and so it will pay itself back over that time frame too. So again, there's no projects, but it's just knowing what acreage was going for in different areas around that campus. This was an opportunity that we only had a few short hours to figure out, but we thought it was worth doing, and I think it's going to pay off hopefully for the district in the long run. So.
Any questions on that? No? All right.
I hadn't had anybody approach me about hearing of the public for non-agenda items.
So we need to
We need it. I'll move to approve the new business items.
Oh, we didn't, okay.
The items under new business.
Sorry, Frank.
Oh, that's okay. That's not a problem.
I'll second it, Frank.
It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Hiddle, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Bostic.
Aye.
Mr. Height.
Aye.
Mr. Patrizio.
Aye.
Mr. Gregerson.
Aye.
Mr. Luby.
Aye. Now, I will say I have not had anybody asked to address the board on any non-agenda items. So reminder, our next meeting will be, or the next meeting will be January 4th for the organizational meeting at 4 o'clock. We are adjourned.